insurance. So when you get hurt or sick and you need expensive medicine or surgery,
Pet insurance from Pumpkin can help.
go to pumpkin.care.
We're still on track to have closing arguments on Friday morning, but the plaintiff only has one more witness in rebuttal, and then since we have a counterclaim, the defense has a chance to have rebuttal for their counterclaim, and so you'll hear the remaining witnesses on that.
It is the final day of testimony in the trial for Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Will she take the stand one more time? Court TV cameras are live inside the Virginia courtroom for it all. Plus,
I've never in my life committed sexual battery.
Depp returns to the witness stand to issue a blanket denial of Heard's allegations of abuse. And he calls the experience of listening to Heard's testimony, quote, insane. That's all ahead right here next on Court TV Live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Court TV Live. I'm Joy Lim-Nakrin in for Ted Rollins this morning. It is an early edition of Court TV Live this morning. It's the final day of testimony in the blockbuster defamation trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, picking up just about an hour from right now. Depp's rebuttal is expected to wrap up this morning with just one more witness set to testify, and then Heard's legal team will present their rebuttal case. Now, the big question this morning is, will Heard herself retake the witness stand, giving her the final word in this trial? The judge has allotted 61 hours and 15 minutes for each side to present their case. Heard's team has just 1 hour left. Depp's team has 7 hours remaining. Now, today marks day 23 now in this trial. It all comes to an end tomorrow. Closing arguments set for Friday, and then it'll be up to the jury to decide who they believe is telling the truth here. Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter has a look at yesterday's drama in court and also what's expected today.
Testimony in Depp v. Heard should wrap up today after Johnny Depp calls one more rebuttal witness, and this after a full day yesterday of witnesses called in rebuttal, including Johnny Depp, the sequel. He returned to the witness stand as the gallery gave a collective gasp of excitement in the courtroom. Depp again testified to what happened to his finger in Australia and showed jurors the placement of his hand in which the vodka bottle was thrown by Amber Heard and sliced his finger. He also told the jurors that he has never abused or sexually assaulted any woman or Amber Heard.
I've never in my life committed sexual battery, physical abuse, all these outlandish, outrageous stories of me committing these things.
The day started on a high note with supermodel Kate Moss, Depp's former girlfriend, testifying via video link from London. She told the jurors that Depp never pushed her down the stairs, debunking the rumor that Amber Heard testified to last week.
As I left the room, I slid down the stairs and I hurt my back. And I screamed because I was because I didn't know what had happened to me and I was in pain. And he came running back to help me and carried me to my room and got me medical attention.
And yesterday, the jury also heard from a former TMZ employee, Morgan Tremaine, who testified that the infamous assaulting the cabinets video was sent to TMZ through a Dropbox from an anonymous source. Also, TMZ was contacted to arrive at the courthouse to snap photos of Amber Heard's injury when she filed that temporary restraining order against Depp in May 2016. Now, earlier in the day, a couple jurors smiled and greeted Dr. Shannon Curry as she made her way back to the witness stand for Johnny Depp to refute Heard's expert, Dr. Don Hughes, by accusing Hughes of manipulating test scores and diagnosing Heard with PTSD. Plus, the jury heard from another last-minute witness coming forward the night before and allowed to testify, Beverly Leonard. She's a former Seattle airport employee. She said she witnessed Amber Heard fighting with her travel companion in 2009 and intervened to stop the altercation near the baggage claim area. Now, during Leonard's testimony, all 9 jurors' heads were down, jotting feverish notes. And of course, outside the courthouse, the crowds continue to show up in full force. Fans are now only allowed to line up starting at 1 a.m. each morning for a chance to gain a seat inside the courtroom. And today could be a short day given the time restraints on the parties here. We do expect the attorneys, once the evidence is in, to hammer out those jury instructions at some point today. But we are on track for closing arguments tomorrow here in Fairfax County, Virginia. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you so much to our Chanley Painter reporting from Virginia. Joining us now, we want to bring in law professor at University of Georgia, former prosecutor Melissa Redmond in Atlanta, and also forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler in Monroe, North Carolina. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, ladies. Miss Redmond, being former prosecutor and having your extensive background in trial court, I want to ask you: do you think that we can anticipate Amber Heard herself to retake the stand today?
I think she will. I think she will want to have the last word from what we've seen previously from the testimony. And I suspect that Depp's team strategically put him up because we didn't get very much more from his testimony in order to goad Amber Heard into taking the stand again, using up a little bit more of her time and giving them another shot at cross-examination of her.
Okay, so Dr. Pettler, obviously your background being in forensic criminology here. We saw Dr. Shannon Curry recalled to testify yesterday. She was refuting this diagnosis, challenging this diagnosis of Amber Heard's having PTSD by Amber Heard's own expert. Do you think that that is an issue that we are going to see come up again today?
I think that the battle of the experts is always something very interesting in the trial process. And of course, with the jury being the most unpredictable animal in the world, we never know what they are actually listening to and hearing and perceiving from each witness. I think that Shannon Curry's presentation of the information is much more listenable, so to speak, where it's easier to understand, I think, than it came from Dr. Hughes, in my opinion. I think the issue could come up again. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if they recalled Dr. Hughes to refute what Dr. Curry said yesterday.
Yeah, and as we know, during rebuttal cases, it's often an opportunity to kind of clean up, if you will, some elements from earlier on in the trial. I want to play a clip, actually, of Amber Heard testifying that she could never hurt Johnny. Let's listen to that, and I want to get your take on it.
And you said to Mr. Depp, quote, you can please tell people that it was a fair fight and see what the jury and the judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp, I, Johnny Depp, a man, a victim too of domestic violence, end quote. That's what you said, right?
I was saying it to the man who beat me up, yes. I thought it was preposterous.
And the man you beat up numerous times. Right, Ms. Heard?
I could never hurt Johnny.
Okay, Ms. Redmond, being a skilled and experienced trial attorney, what do you do if you're Ms. Heard's lawyer and you need to clean that up?
You do have to put her back on the stand. You have to refute some of the things that he said on his rebuttal. And that's the thing, that her rebuttal case is going to be very limited. It's not like she'll be able to go in and rehash everything that we heard in her initial direct testimony, but just those things that she can clean up very quickly. Again, she does not have a lot of time left. You have to be very strategic, and you also have to decide whether or not it really matters. Is there anything you can add other than getting that last word when we talk about primacy and recency, other than being the last voice or one of the last voices of testimony that the jury will hear? Is there really anything you can add to what you've already done, contrasting with the opening yourself up to cross-examination again? And the dangers of that, and what else we saw that didn't work out well for Johnny Depp with those additional text messages. So you have to make that kind of strategic decision of whether or not what you can gain will be more than what you'll the detriment that it'll have in your case if you put yourself, or if she testifies yet again in rebuttal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so Ms. Pettler, obviously your background is forensic criminology. Based on the evidence that we've seen, what do you think needs to happen from an evidentiary standpoint in terms of the rebuttal case for Heard?
So one of the key aspects to remember about intimate partner violence is that it is a pervasive pattern, a systematic pattern of abuse. And I think that the difference between the two litigants in this case is that Johnny Depp gets up on the stand and adamantly denies ever abusing her at all, where Amber Heard takes the stand and admits to fights with him and justifies them because he was abusing her. I think they're two very different perceptions and perspectives on the same issue. And so from my standpoint, as an expert in intimate partner homicide, there are things that have rung true for me throughout the trial from both sides when they say things about each other. But one of the key things to me that I think is important is what we call victimology. And when we study the victims in a case like this, whether it's a defamation case or whether it's a homicide case, we're looking for all of the information that stems all the way back to who they were before they got with their current intimate partner. And I thought that the testimony from the former airport employee about the incident between Amber and her traveling companion was extremely compelling compared to Miss Kate Moss's testimony for Johnny Depp.
Yeah, and that was really a surprise. I mean, you're mentioning this testimony from the former Seattle airport employee named Beverly Leonard, who testified about Amber's eyes being watery and smelling like she had alcohol on her breath and this kind of behavior. And that was a last-minute thing. Ms. Redmond, how much do you think that helped Johnny Depp?
Oh, tremendously, because as you said, you do have this, as my colleague said, you do have this pattern, or at least the inference of a pattern from Amber Heard with her intimate partners and being violent towards her intimate partners. And we don't see that with Johnny Depp. So the fact that she denied that incident happened allowed them to bring in this last minute witness to verify that I saw it. I'm an eyewitness to this incident. And it's not uncommon, and I'm sure that Johnny Depp's attorneys will argue that it's not uncommon, as we've seen before, for Ms. Heard's partner at the time to deny that that was a violent incident, that things got blown out of proportion or mischaracterized in some way. But when you have an eyewitness who can testify, this is what I saw, and it was some type of angry confrontation between the two, along with the other witnesses we've heard from the ranch and other witnesses who've indicated this type of behavior from Ms. Heard before, helps Johnny Depp's case tremendously.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your insight and analysis. Law professor and former prosecutor, Ms. Melissa Redmond, joining us, and forensic criminologist, Dr. Laura Pettler. We'll hear more from them ahead. Court TV bring you gavel-to-gavel coverage of this trial. Lead Court TV anchor Vinnie Politan is live from Fairfax, Virginia tonight and tomorrow. So please join us for closing arguments starting at 8 o'clock. And also ahead, Johnny Depp retaking the stand in his defamation case against his ex-wife Amber Heard. So we're going to break down what jurors got to see from him in his court sequel next on Court TV Live.
Now.
No matter what happens, I did get here, and I did tell the truth, and I have spoken up for what I've been carrying on my back reluctantly for 6 years.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. We're in the final day now of testimony in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's multi-million-dollar defamation trial. Depp still has 7 hours remaining for his case today, but perhaps the most significant testimony came yesterday when he took the stand himself for a second time. On direct examination, Depp disputed the claims against him, and he addressed everything from the abuse he says he suffered at the hands of Amber Heard to her role in Aquaman. Let's listen.
Have never in my life committed sexual battery, physical abuse, all these outlandish, outrageous stories of me committing these things and living with it for 6 years and waiting to be able to bring the truth out.
And what happened while you and Miss Heard were together on the Orient Express?
There were times when it was very agreeable, very nice. And then there were times when something had become dissatisfactory for her, and she would start the rant, the blooming of a fight would be on deck there, and at one point, it didn't. I mean, I don't remember it lasting long at all. I just remember that I took a pretty good shot to the face, to the eye, to somewhere up here. So I had a bit of a shiner. But it all ended, and then everything got fine again, and we'd go to dinner, and it was all fine.
Did Miss Heard ever apologize to you for giving you the shiner?
I don't recall.
And approximately where was your hand when the vodka bottle hit it?
It was leaning. My arm was leaning on the marble bar, right there where the imaginary seat is, and leaning, kind of just leaning back and looking at Miss Heard. She just walked away with the second bottle. She walked this way when she threw the first bottle, which is actually visible in the background on the floor.
Yeah. Could you please circle where the first bottle is?
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Yeah. All that is the exploded first bottle that went past my head. And the second bottle hit right up here where my hand was resting on the marble bar.
Do you recall Miss Heard testifying that you did not assist her in getting her role in Aquaman?
Yes, I do, yes.
And what is your response to that?
It's not exactly true.
Do you know when Miss Heard first auditioned for Aquaman?
I was scheduled with my band, the Hollywood Vampires. We had done 2 shows at the Roxy, which is a place in Los Angeles. We were invited to play at the Rock in Rio concert, which is a huge rock and roll festival. So we did the 2 shows to go to Rio. Miss Heard wanted to come with me, and Whitney, her sister, had come as well. While we were there in Rio, we were rehearsing, getting ready for the show. Miss Heard informed me that she would have to get back to Los Angeles for an audition. Basically, after our 2-hour show or whatever, we would have to get on the plane immediately to make it back to Los Angeles.
When were you performing at the Rock in Rio?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was I believe it was the 24th of September.
In what year?
That was 15.
All right, joining us once again, we have law professor at University of Georgia and former prosecutor Melissa Redmond in Atlanta, and forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler joining us in Monroe, North Carolina. So that was Johnny Depp's sequel in court. He took the stand again yesterday. Ms. Redmond, how do you think he did in his rebuttal?
I don't think he did as well as he did the first time, honestly. I think there was a a lot to be desired. Some things he did on cross-examination that were not particularly helpful to his case. Some denials he made where he could have just admitted sending some of the text messages and just moving on instead of letting the Amber Heard's attorneys harp on it for several minutes. And I think the part about whether or not he got Amber Heard's got her the part in Aquaman, whether or not he did anything to try to get her fired from Aquaman, could have been left to closing arguments with the evidence we've already seen. I would not have wanted to use my time in rebuttal to talk about those issues when those are not the major issues in the case. I think they had enough to argue that someone of his influence in Hollywood could have gotten his fiance or his girlfriend at the time an audition, or that he made a call when he felt like he was being defamed or lies were being told on him to executives to let them know this is the type of person, and I didn't know that at the time that I recommended her to you. I think you could have argued that. I don't think I would have spent time on rebuttal rehashing that of all the incidents we've heard of throughout the course of the trial. I don't think that would have been the point I would have spent time making of whether or not he got her the part.
Yeah. And by the way, we're going to get a little deeper into cross-examination and replay parts of that testimony in our next segment. But also, before we move ahead, I want to get your take on it, Ms. Pettler. You know, from kind of a forensic standpoint, how does that jive with what we've heard on the stand, and particularly what we heard from Johnny Depp yesterday?
You know, one of the things that we always do with any kind of victim or subject or witness that we are evaluating for authenticity and likability and all of these things that are very important in the trial process when jurors are watching them and listening to them is the body language and the tone they use, what we call idiolect, which is the way someone speaks very, very idiosyncratically versus other people, the word choice and the sentence structure. And I agree with Ms. Redmond. I think that he was a little bit different than he was the first time, but he wasn't less authentic to me. I do agree that he definitely could have just moved on from some of those particular items instead of opening the door to more questions about them or even more discussion about them. So, you know, from my take as a criminologist, it's different, obviously, than an attorney. Because I'm looking at a lot of the behavior, and I'm in this trial, not only am I looking for the damages, but I'm also looking for the predominant aggressor, the pattern of violence between them. And violence can be in any form, whether it's emotional, psychological, sexual, financial, physical. And, you know, it's important to recognize all of these things towards the absolute defense of truth versus defamation.
And, you know, by most accounts, one of the most brilliant moments of the day yesterday for Depp's team on rebuttal was calling Kate Moss. And she testified via video link from the United Kingdom, recounting basically her version of the staircase incident that had been described very differently from by Amber Heard. So let's go ahead and listen to Kate Moss.
Did Mr. Depp push you in any way down the stairs?
No.
During the course of your relationship, did he ever push you down any stairs?
No, he never pushed me, kicked me, or threw me down any stairs.
So what specifically had you actually told Ms. Heard about the incident with Ms. Moss and the stairs?
Very simply that we were in Jamaica. I had left our bungalow about 3 minutes prior to her. I was standing outside, and suddenly rain starts just coming down like it's, you know, monsoon. And then I remember looking and seeing Kate coming out the door, and there were 3 little wooden stairs, and she slipped, her legs went up, and she landed directly on her coccyx and her lower back. So, and she was obviously physically in pain, and she was hurt, she was crying. So I ran over and grabbed her to make sure she was all right. That's it. That's all I ever that's the whole story. But then the rumor of it, I'd never heard a rumor of that before Miss Heard grabbed hold of it.
Okay, so Ms. Redmond, you hear that. We hear this from Johnny Depp recounting the staircase incident. Kate Moss herself saying, no, he never pushed me downstairs, whatever, Amber Heard's insinuating. And Amber Heard is the one who brought up Kate Moss's name in her own testimony. How much does that damage Amber Heard's credibility?
A lot, because she is the one that's painting Johnny Depp as this abuser. And she intimated to the jury that he's been abusive before, that he threw a former girlfriend down a flight of stairs. That's something very dramatic. That's something very violent and very vivid, of that imagery of someone being thrown down the stairs. So to have witnesses come forward to say that never happened, I never told her that happened, and I don't know why she would make up this incident, leaves the impression to the jury that she will be able to make up other incidents, other allegations of violence that may not be true, because this was categorically denied by all of the parties involved. And there's no other eyewitnesses to say that it happened any other way than what Johnny Depp and Kate Moss testified to.
Yeah, and this is a mostly male jury, let's point out, so they might be sympathetic to the former supermodel, Kate Moss. We'll see about that. All right, coming up, we're going to take a look at how Depp did on cross-examination yesterday and some of the inconsistencies that were brought out in his testimony next on Court TV Live.
Screen right now.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. We're just moments away from the final day of testimony in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's dueling defamation cases out of Fairfax, Virginia. Depp will continue his rebuttal case this morning, and then it will be Heard's turn to put on hers. Jurors were able to get one last impression of Depp on the stand yesterday when he testified for a second time, telling jurors the allegations against him were completely false. But during cross-examination, Heard's attorney, Ben Rottenborn, was able to present Depp with several text messages and photos that seemed to contradict his earlier statements. Let's watch.
You've said before that if you want to be with a woman sexually, that she is rightfully yours, haven't you?
Could you repeat that?
And you've also said that with
Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, that if you want to be with a woman sexually, that she is rightfully yours.
That's ludicrous.
You've also said that with respect to women that you want to be with, you've remarked, I need, I want, I take, haven't you?
Equally as ludicrous, no.
Can you pull up DX883, please?
You can pull it what you like. I've never said those words.
Mr. Depp, we can show the full unredacted. You've looked at a number of text messages in this case, and the words him as the identifier, that's you, correct? In every text message we've seen in this case.
Yeah, sure. It still doesn't mean it hasn't been screwed with. That's not anything that I've ever said or written.
Mr. Depp, in these pictures that were taken before you got on the train ride for your honeymoon, where you claim that Miss Heard hit you and gave you a black eye, you have the exact same shadow or sunburn or mark under your left eye. The exact same mark, don't you?
That's the, when you get a side light, you see the occipital bone. So that is the exact area.
Yep. And it's actually...
A side light will cause that.
Yeah, well, the picture's not being taken from the side, is it? It's being taken head on, isn't it?
No. The lens in front,
yeah.
The light on the side will cause that occipital bone, I believe it's called, to appear sunken.
Just like lights on the side of a train car, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
You can take that down, Michelle.
That was, in fact, in the dark. And I had a chef, I had people on either side of me, so.
Mr. Depp, this is the same picture, or the exact same scene displayed in PX 162 that you looked at this morning, correct?
That looks like my face has been, the eyes have been photoshopped.
Mr. Depp, you testified previously that the vodka bottle that you allege cut off your finger was a handle of vodka, correct?
Yes.
You've already testified to that.
The second bottle, there was a handle on that bottle,
Right.
yes.
This bottle, whatever it is, to the extent it's glass at all, that's in the corner of this room, that's not a handle of vodka.
Objection calls for speculation.
I think you'll find that I said 2 bottles.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's not a handle. Neither of those are handles of vodka.
It's that big. It's broken. The handle's up the top on those vodka bottles, sir.
There is no picture of a handle of vodka broken on that floor, is there, Mr. Depp?
No, I don't see it.
And on June 4th, 2016, Mr. Depp, you texted your sister, "I want her replaced on that WB film." Did I read that right?
You did.
Her is referring to Amber, right?
That's correct.
And WB is Warner Brothers, correct?
Again, correct, yes.
And then after you sent this text to your sister, following the temporary restraining order, you reached out to Guy Silverstein to have him fire Amber, correct?
Who?
Greg Silverstein, I'm sorry.
I don't recall reaching out to Greg Silverstein.
And in this text, Mr. Depp, you said, "She's begging for total global humiliation. She's gonna get it. I'm gonna need your texts about San Francisco, brother. I'm even sorry to ask, but she sucked Mollusk's crooked and he gave her some lawyers. I have no mercy, no fear, and not an ounce of emotion, or what I once thought was love for this gold-digging, low-level, dime-a-dozen, mushy, pointless, dangling, overused, flappy fish market. I'm so happy she wants to go to fight this out. She will hit the wall hard, and I cannot wait to have this waste of a guzzler out of my life. I met a sublime little Russian here, which made me realize the time I blew on that 50-cent stripper. I wouldn't touch her with a love. I can only hope that karma kicks in and takes the gift of breath from her. Sorry, man, but now I will stop at nothing. Let's see if Mollusk has a pair. Come see me face to face. I'll show him things he's never seen before, like the other side of his when I slice it off." Did I read that right?
You did.
All right, let's bring back in our guest, law professor at University of Georgia and former prosecutor Melissa Redmond in Atlanta, and forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler in North Carolina joining us. Okay, Ms. Pettler, when you listen to that, how does that strike you? I mean, that whole interaction, that really aggressive cross-examination by Ben Rottenborn, and then Johnny Depp's kind of cool, calm responses.
I think that is how Johnny Depp is most of the time. I mean, we've seen him in several different situations now. We've seen him under duress and being confronted by Mr. Rottenborn, first on the initial cross-examination and now the second on rebuttal. And I think that Johnny Depp handled himself pretty well. I think that he was confronted with some really difficult things to say, that if he did say those things or text those things, it was said with definitely, he was very angry, and, you know, he really, I thought, handled himself well, because those things were very difficult to hear. I thought Amber Heard's reaction in the courtroom was also very interesting, and that she was appearing to be very saddened by listening to that. And it was one way or the other, whether it's true or not, it certainly was a disturbing thing to hear for anybody, about anybody else.
Yeah, Ms. Redmond, what do you think? Do you agree? And do you think that Rottenborn's style of cross-examination might actually boomerang?
I agree. I think it was impactful for the jury, especially because you have to imagine that the jury, while they're hearing this language and hearing these text messages, they're looking at both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, looking for those reactions. Johnny Depp is very cool, so yes, that's what the text messages says. He's not necessarily admitting to all of them, but he does admit that the him in the text messages refers to himself, and that the words that were being read by Mr. Rottenberg was in those text messages. And then we have that emotion coming from Amber Heard, being very hurt by what she's hearing. I think Johnny Depp could have just admitted that I was angry at the time. He would have been able to explain on redirect why he was so angry if he felt like Amber Heard was intentionally trying to destroy his career by spreading what he characterizes as lies about him, and he wanted to revenge or was hurt or angry at the time. I think that's all perfectly understandable and a little bit more believable than these text messages are doctored and it looks exactly like all of the other text messages that you've seen from me or heard from me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, both ladies, for your insight and analysis. Of course, we're going to keep watching Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp. Live testimony expected to resume about 17 minutes from now. But we also continue to follow the other major legal stories happening around the nation, including the latest developments in the manhunt for a Texas woman wanted for the killing of an elite cyclist. This is a love triangle murder case. Investigators suspect this woman, 34-year-old Caitlin Armstrong, is involved in the May 11th shooting death of cycling star Anna Mariah Wilson. A massive nationwide search is now underway for Armstrong. The U.S. Marshal Service released surveillance video of Armstrong, the agency saying that she boarded a flight from Austin to Houston's Hobby Airport just 3 days after the shooting, and she then boarded a connecting flight, investigators say, to New York's LaGuardia Airport. Court TV's Vinnie Politan spoke with Deputy U.S. Marshal Brandon Filla about the search.
Originally, we focused here in Austin, and now we can say now we're going to New York, and we will try to find out what her association is there. And we're hoping that the public will give us some type of insight of a tip, and maybe she got on some type of Uber or Lyft, and they'll remember transferring her somewhere on a ride. So that's really where our hopes are at right now until we can find out that that destination point or what type of association or family members that she may have in that area.
Armstrong is suspected of killing Wilson in Austin after finding out that Wilson had an affair with Armstrong's boyfriend. Wilson was in Texas training for an upcoming race near Waco when a friend she was staying with discovered her body. If you have any information, you can call that number on your screen, 800-336-0102. Also have an update on another trial that we've been following closely here on Court TV. An Oregon jury has now reached a verdict in the romance novelist murder trial of Nancy Brophy. She's accused of killing her own husband, Dan, after writing a blog post called How to Murder Your Husband. Here is the verdict.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do find our verdicts upon the counts submitted to us as follows. Count 1, murder in the second degree, guilty.
Nancy Brophy will be sentenced on Monday, June 13th. For more on her case, you can go to courttv.com. And still ahead, it is the final week of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial. The final days for hundreds of Depp fans to see the stars outside and inside court. Next, we're going to catch up with a few of Amber Heard's supporters as well as we count down to live testimony resuming just about 14 minutes from now. So keep it right here on Court TV Live.
Hard work pays off.
All right, so that's Johnny Depp arriving to the Fairfax, Virginia courthouse just moments ago, and we're just moments away now from the final day of testimony in Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. They're dueling defamation cases, the anticipation building inside and outside the courtroom. Clearly, fans have been lining up every day outside that courthouse, and a majority of the fans are there, as you could probably gather, to support Johnny Depp. But Court TV's Chanley Painter did catch up with a few of Amber Heard's supporters. Let's listen.
And why are you here today?
To support Amber Heard.
What are you hoping by being here? hoping to accomplish?
I don't know if I'm hoping to really accomplish anything. It's just, I wasn't even like a fan before, but I was looking online because I saw like just this like horrific treatment of this woman for seemingly like no reason. And there was no one supporting her. Everyone was just joining in. They were turning her sexual assault testimony into a funny TikTok trend where they act it out. Just, they go and they harass her outside of the courthouse every day, and they boo at her, and they call her a liar. They say, "We don't believe you, Amber." And it just made me sick. It just made my stomach turn. I couldn't believe what I was watching, and no one was doing anything about it. So this is what I would want someone to do for me, I guess. Like, if I were all alone and the entire world hated me for telling a truth that they didn't want to hear, and they were harassing me, I would hope that someone would care enough to come and support me. So, and I feel like I'm the only one here, and that just blows my mind, and it breaks my heart.
And actually, just moments ago, Amber Heard arrived at the courthouse. Let's watch.
Good morning. How are you?
2 more days.
Okay, so still with us, we have law professor from the University of Georgia, former prosecutor Melissa Redmond, joining us here in Atlanta. Forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Pettler in North Carolina. So looking at kind of the fanfare, particularly surrounding Johnny Depp, what kind of impact does that have on the proceedings here, Ms. Redmond?
We hope not much. We hope that the jury is not impacted by what's happening outside the courthouse. I believe in this courthouse, I'm not entirely sure that there's a separate interest from the jury. Of course, we don't know what they see driving in, how early the people line up outside the courthouse to show their support for Johnny Depp. But nevertheless, they will be instructed, and they have been instructed, to disregard what they're seeing outside the courtroom, to make their decision not based on sympathy towards either party, not based on animosity toward either party, but rather the evidence and the testimony that they're hearing in the courtroom. And all we could do is hope that they abide by that oath that they take to do so.
Yeah, and actually there is a separate entrance for the jury, but nevertheless, I mean, that's a huge spectacle that we're seeing outside the courthouse. And Chanley Painter just reported, you know, they line up starting at 1 a.m., these fans coming out to see Johnny Depp. What do you think, Ms. Pettler? I mean, is it just kind of human nature to be swayed by that?
I think that the majority of the country that follows Hollywood, follows these stars, they definitely have a vested interest in what is happening with their favorite actors. And so, unfortunately, I don't know how anybody couldn't notice what's going on out there. And to the woman that was talking earlier about that she came there to support Amber Heard, I do think that Amber Heard has been vilified. And in this particular trial, it must be very difficult for her to hear all of that every day versus what Johnny Depp is hearing every day. And I have, you know, no idea how it might impact the jury. But as Ms. Redmond said, I hope it doesn't at all. And they take into consideration what the core of the trial is about. Did the defamation, or did what Amber Heard say defame Johnny Depp, and did what he said and his attorney say defame her? You know, we haven't heard a pervasive pattern of violence in his past, but we have heard in testimony that she came to the relationship with a history of violence in her past.
All right, well, thank you so much for your insight and analysis. Dr. Laura Pettler joining us. And again, we're just less than 5 minutes away now from live testimony resuming in Fairfax, Virginia, so keep it right here on Court TV.
We licensed everything.
You've said before that if you want to be with a woman sexually, that she is rightfully yours, haven't you?
That's ludicrous. I had vetted Ms. Heard.
Mr. Depp, you got your chance to speak this morning. Your Honor,
Warner Brothers had 2 franchises.
Mr. Depp, if you could just answer the questions.
And that's not a handle. Neither of those are handles of vodka.
It's that big. It's broken. The handle's up the top.
Mr. Newmeister, what's your opinion about the authenticity here?
There's no way for any forensic expert to validate any of these photos.
No matter what happens, I did get here, and I did tell the truth.
We're still on track to have closing arguments on Friday morning.
Welcome to Court TV Live. The courtroom battle between Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard gets underway at any moment in Fairfax, Virginia. Court TV cameras are there for it all. The judge on the bench. Let's listen.
Do we have any preliminary matters at this time?
Very brief.
Okay, sure. If you want to come forward.
So it is the final day of testimony now. Depp's team expected to wrap up their rebuttal case this morning with just one more witness, and it will then be up to Heard's legal team to present their rebuttal case. Of course, the big question this morning is, will Heard retake the witness stand, giving her the final word in this trial? Closing arguments are set for tomorrow. Both sides are up against a time limit set by the judge. Heard's team has just 1 hour left. Depp's team has 7 hours remaining. Want to bring in now law professor at the University of Georgia, former prosecutor Melissa Redmond, joining us in Atlanta. Waiting to see, again, if Heard is going to take the stand. What is your opinion? Do you think it's likely she will?
With an hour, 16 minutes, I don't think she will. I don't think that's enough time to clean up anything she would want to, or to make any explanations she would want the jury to hear. It would be rushed. So I don't anticipate she'll take the stand with that little amount of time left.
So interesting. Each parties have 61 hours, 15 minutes each, and this is how kind of we're coming to these calculations about Heard having an hour 16 left and Depp having 7 hours 8 minutes left. How common or unusual is it to have these sort of time limits in cases like these?
I think it's pretty uncommon. I've had judges say, I want this trial done in a week, I want it done in 2 weeks. But as far as the limit on the number of hours, other than how long you'll have for closing arguments, this is the first trial I've seen where the judge has set like 61 hours and 15 minutes. I'm curious as to how she came to that number. But it is the first case that I've seen where a judge has attached a number. It may be common practice in this jurisdiction.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Johnny Depp really takes his time on the stand. I'm wondering if that might be harmful or helpful to him. What do you think?
I think it's helpful because it gives the jury more time to observe him, to especially when as he's coming across as authentic and likable and charismatic. So the more the jury sees of that, the less likely they are to believe that he is the person that Amber Heard is painting him out to be.
Yeah, and so we're just watching the judge and the attorneys there, Benjamin Rottenborn for Amber Heard, Camille Vasquez for Johnny Depp there, and certainly she's emerged as a star in all of this. Let's listen.
Okay, thank you.
And the jury is entering, so just moments away now from the continuation of testimony in Johnny Depp's rebuttal case. And again, the big question is, you see everyone rising now for the jury to enter. Big question for today is, Amber Heard going to take the stand? Something we're waiting to see. But Johnny Depp's team is expected to bring an expert today as a final witness in their rebuttal case. Again, they've got 7 hours left with their time. Ms. Redmond, what kind of expert would be most beneficial to them at this point?
Maybe someone who's, it's kind of hard to say because they pretty well covered everything. I would have ended with Johnny Depp. So.
Okay. Let's listen as they call their next witness.
Dr. Gilbert.
No. Sir, please face the court, raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case under penalty of law?
I do.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Gilbert.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Richard Stephen Gilbert.
And what is your occupation?
I am an orthopedic surgeon, and I have a subspecialty training in surgery of the hand and upper extremity.
Dr. Gilbert, where do you work currently?
I currently work in New York and Long Island at Northwell Health.
And you mentioned you have a specialty. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your specialty is?
So after medical school, I trained in orthopedic surgery, and I did an orthopedic surgery residency. And for a year thereafter, I did a hand and upper extremity surgery resident fellowship. And so my practice for the past 22 years has been limited to surgery of the hand, wrist, and elbow.
And I think you may have gotten ahead of me there, but how long have you been practicing?
22 years.
Okay. What percentage of your practice over the past 22 years has involved surgery?
Approximately 1/3 of my practice.
Okay. And other than that 1/3 that involves surgery, what does the rest of your practice entail?
The rest of my practice entails some academic work, but mostly seeing patients in the office, seeing them either pre or post-operatively. A large portion of hand surgeons treat patients non-operatively.
In terms of the surgeries that you do, can you describe for us the types of surgeries that you will perform?
So again, I limit my practice to hand, wrist, and elbow. I would say approximately 75% or so of my practice is limited to the hand itself. And this really varies from anything from conditions like carpal tunnel syndrome to tendinitis to injuries such as amputations, fractures, sharp lacerations, etc.
Over the course of your 22 years of practice, how many surgeries would you estimate you've performed?
I perform about 300 to 400 surgeries a year, so a rough estimate would be approximately 10,000, maybe a little less.
Where are you currently licensed?
In New York.
And how long have you been licensed in New York?
I have been licensed in New York since 1994, so that would be 28 years.
And do you have any certifications?
Yes.
And can you tell us about those?
I am board certified by the American Board of Orthopedic Surgery, and I have a certificate of added qualifications in surgery of the hand from the American Society for Surgery of the Hand.
When did you receive your board certification?
2002.
And can you describe for us what current positions you hold?
I am currently an assistant professor of orthopedic surgery at Northwell Health, and I'm also the president-elect of the New York Society for Surgery of the Hand.
In what professional organizations are you a member?
I'm a member of multiple orthopedic organizations, including the American Board of Orthopedic Surgery, the American Association of Orthopedic Surgery, and the American Society for Surgery of the Hand, as well as the New York Society for Surgery of the Hand.
Have you published any articles in your field?
Yes, I have.
Have you testified as an expert before?
Yes, I have.
Can you ballpark for us how many times?
Certainly less than 10 over the past 22 years.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to offer Dr. Gilbert as an expert in the field of orthopedic surgery, specializing in the hand.
All right, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
So moved.
So, Dr. Gilbert, what work were you asked to do in connection with this case?
So I was asked to review medical records, radiographs, pictures, as well as testimonies and depositions related to Mr. Depp's finger injury.
Okay. And to your understanding, what is Mr. Depp's explanation of how his finger was injured?
He describes that he was in Australia and his right hand was over the side of a bar when a vodka bottle was thrown at his hand, injuring his right middle finger. And he describes that the vodka bottle exploded.
Are you aware of other explanations for that injury?
There have been multiple other explanations, but I think the one that was brought out was by Ms. Hurd, who believed that Mr. Depp was holding a landline and out of anger was punching it against the wall, and this resulted in his right middle finger injury.
Okay. Based on your review of the medical records and other documents in connection with Mr. Depp's finger injury, how would you describe the nature of the injury to Mr. Depp's finger?
Well, the nature of the injury was he had what we describe as a comminuted fracture of the distal phalanx, meaning there was a fracture of the tip of the finger, and comminuted meaning that there were multiple pieces. So this is some type of blunt force with a high mechanism of injury. He also sustained loss of the tissue along what's called the ulnar side of the finger towards the little finger. And this appeared, based upon my review of the pictures, to be some type of sharp laceration because it represented a clean edges of the wound.
Can we take a look at Plaintiff's Exhibit 60? And pull up to go to page 3. And Dr. Gillard, are you familiar with this document?
Yes.
And what is it?
So these are two radiographs, x-rays of Mr. Depp's finger, his middle finger.
Okay. Sorry, just to stop you, but Your Honor, may we publish this to the jury as a demonstrative?
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, we'll identify it as 60, page 3, and publish to the jury.
And Dr. Gilbert, sorry to cut you off there. Can you just tell the jury what we're looking at here in this X-ray?
Two X-rays of Mr. Depp's right middle finger after the injury, and towards the tip of the finger, there's a fracture. Again, what I described as a comminuted fracture, meaning there are multiple pieces at the tip. There's also a transverse component to the fracture closer to the joint.
In your view, what types of mechanisms can cause this sort of injury?
So this is a mechanism of injury that has high velocity or force, generally a crush type injury. A simple fall would not result in a comminuted fracture such as is seen in these X-rays.
And we're using the term comminuted fracture. Can we just define that quickly for us?
So again, comminuted, and it's not particular to a finger, is a medical term for a fracture that has multiple fragments.
In your opinion, could this injury have been sustained in the manner Mr. Depp described?
I do believe so.
And how might that work? How might a thrown vodka bottle produce an injury like this?
So a vodka bottle, which is a hard object, would have crushed the tip of the finger, resulting in the comminuted fracture. And in addition, as the vodka bottle broke, the glass would have lacerated the finger, resulting in the soft tissue loss that was also seen with this injury.
So this orthopedic surgeon testifying in Johnny Depp's rebuttal case, we're going to hit pause here, but you're not going to miss a thing. We'll bring you back in where we're leaving off here on Court TV.
Download the free app now.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. It's the final day of testimony in Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. An orthopedic surgeon has been on the stand now, is expected to be the final witness for Johnny Depp's rebuttal case, testifying about the injury that Johnny Depp describes that he suffered at the hands of Amber Heard. Let's get you back into court right where we left off.
What's your assessment of the description of the cause of the injury offered by Ms. Heard?
I think that's highly unlikely.
And why is that?
Because one, in general, when an injury is caused by punching against a wall or a hard object, it is extremely rare to see an injury to the tips of the fingers, which is seen with Mr. Depp's injury. Generally, you're holding something with a fist, and that in general leads to injuries most commonly of the knuckles here, or fractures of the metacarpals. We call these boxer fractures. Second most common after those would be injuries to these. But as you can see, if you're holding something and hitting against something, it is very unlikely that the tips of the fingers will be injured. In addition, just taking into account the radiographs and the pictures of the injury, I would not believe that solely a blunt force against a wall would result in the soft tissue loss.
What other injuries, if any, would you expect to see on Mr. Depp's hand if the injury had occurred as Ms. Hurd described?
So if that were the cause of the injury, you would certainly, that would be a dorsally directed. So this is the dorsal in the back of the hand as opposed to the palmar side. So if you're punching against something, you would certainly expect an injury to the nail bed, and those are always seen in those type of injuries. If there is an injury to the tip of the finger, which again I said is rare, so you would see either a loss of the nail or blood underneath the nail called a subungual hematoma.
In your review of the medical records, did you see any sign of anything like that?
None whatsoever.
In your view, is the injury, can you explain to us exactly why you think the injury is consistent with Mr. Depp's description?
Well, again, his hand, he describes his hand being held over a marble bar, which is a firm, something firm, unyielding, and the bottle hit against the finger. So basically the finger was crushed, resulting in, again, what I described as a comminuted fracture. And as Mr. Depp described, the bottle exploded. So it's certainly reasonable that the glass that exploded as well led to the soft tissue loss along the ulnar aspect of his finger.
Okay. Now, did you observe the testimony of Dr. Richard Moore?
Yes, I did.
And he testified about Mr. Depp's finger injury as well?
Correct.
Right. Did you agree with Dr. Moore's testimony?
Certain parts of his testimony I did, yes, okay. But not all of it.
Focusing on the parts that well, first of all, why don't you tell us what you agree on?
Well, I agreed in terms of his interpretation of the x-rays, saying that he had a comminuted fracture and this was some type of high force injury.
Okay. What did you disagree with?
Well, I disagreed with several things that he said. He first said that he does not believe that the mechanism of injury could be, as described by Mr. Depp, holding the hand on the side of a marble bar, because he said it was all a palmar injury, and there was a palmar component to the injury, but I'm talking about the soft tissue loss, but there was also a dorsal, meaning the back of the finger. So the soft tissue loss was actually, if you looked at the pictures which were shown when Dr. Moore testified, the injury goes like this. So it's an angled or an oblique type injury. And there's no way that anybody could determine whether or not it was a palmar directive force, meaning from the palm side, or dorsally directive force. But certainly either are plausible.
Okay. Anything else come to mind that you disagreed with?
Well, he also described that this was well, he thought that this was a pinching or what he described as an avulsion type injury. And that's referring to the soft tissue loss. That's certainly possible, but if you look at the pictures that were shown when he testified, the laceration looked fairly clean. There were clean edges, it was not jagged. And generally when you have an avulsion or a pinch type injury, you see a very irregular border to the skin. It's pinched off, you can imagine, as opposed to something that's cleaner that would be lacerated by, let's just say, a piece of glass or a knife or whatever. And that's more consistent with the pictures of Mr. Depp's injury.
And we're using the term soft tissue loss, and just to make sure we're on the same page, can you just tell the jury quickly what you're referring to there?
Right, so there were two components to this injury. One, the fracture of the bone, and two, he had loss of the soft tissues so that the bone was exposed. So that amputated part that was found at the bar.
Now, you were saying that Dr. Moore testified that this was an avulsion, meaning a pinching injury, right?
Correct.
Why do you believe it's more likely that it was a laceration?
Well, again, in general, a pinch-type injury results in, one, much more damage to the remaining tissue, but the remaining tissue is usually very irregular. The borders are jagged, and that's not what was depicted in the pictures.
Dr. Moore also testified that he thought a vodka bottle might not have sufficient force to cause the injury here. Is that your understanding of his testimony?
Correct.
What's your response to that?
I certainly believe that a vodka bottle that was thrown from a distance against a hand that was resting on a marble bar is more than sufficient force to result in this fracture and soft tissue loss.
Now, in looking at the medical records and the pictures of Mr. Depp's hand, what was the condition of his nail?
There was no injury to the nail.
And other than what you've already told us, how does that factor into your analysis, if at all? The fact that there was no injury to the nail?
Well, it makes it highly unlikely that the mechanism of injury described by Ms. Heard resulted in this injury, because you really would always see an injury to the nail and or nail bed.
Do you have any opinion regarding the direction of the injury?
Well, it's certainly